Hey, what's up? It's Pat. I'm back. Back to talk about bootleg cassettes for a little bit. You're Ground Zero Salem, of course, and we're listening to Stalingrad. This was a British metallic hardcore, early metalcore kind of band. Kind of interesting because, as far as I understand it, they played mostly with bands like Doom and crusty bands like that. I think if they weren't on Flat Earth Records, they at least played with a lot of those bands that were prevalent in that part of Britain in the late 90s, early 2000s. But they are very much like a mosh metal band of the day. Very good at it. Big, heavy riffs, tortured, screaming kind of vocals. You know, not too dissimilar from maybe some of the Bremen, Germany metalcore stuff going on at the time. Maybe the early efforts of bands like Acme from Bremen, Germany, Acrid from Canada, even lapsing into some Victory Records kind of shit. You know, there's some songs that, faster songs on this that almost sound like Integrity. The guy who sang for Doom at the time guested on this even, so it's an interesting artifact from that period in time. I've been over there a couple of times, going to shows at the big DIY club in that area, the 1 in 12, or is it 1 to 1? God, my brain is dying. Sorry. I think it's the 1 in 12 center in Bradford, UK. Like big 3-story, all like volunteer-run DIY space. That's really, really awesome. And I never saw them, but I remember they were pretty big when I went over there the first time. And I've been meaning to pick up this LP and get my hands on some of this stuff for a while. It's called Patty, We Kind of Missed You on Your Birthday. That's okay, guys. Birthdays come every year. And this one came out on Armed with Anger, but like I said, I think they had at least songs on a comp that was on Flat Earth, which was a pretty important label at the time. All right, attention everyone. Little correction here. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I just speak off the dome without really researching. It appears that Stalingrad, most of their output was put out on a label called Armed with Anger. None of their stuff came out on Flat Earth. I kind of thought that it did for whatever reason. Probably the involvement of a couple of different Doom members that might have something to do with it. Also, this was the compilation I was thinking of. Very good compilation of the first 10 years of Flat Earth Records. There's some great bands on here. You got the Electro Hippies, Disaffect, Doom, Hiatus, Drop Dead is on this, Suffer, Pink Turds in Space, one of the better Irish bands to come out of that Warzone center scene. Generic, underrated, great compilation there. I had it on tape, but no Stalingrad. They were related to all that stuff, played that club a lot and everything, but they were never on Flat Earth. So, back to our regular viewing. Did a lot of stuff like Doom, issued Los Crudos in the UK and stuff like that. So that's going to be playing in the background. It's cool because it's crunchy metallic hardcore, but you can maybe hear it right now. They lapse into some harsh noise and electronic stuff. Just a little bit. It's very tastefully done. It's really good. So, yesterday I shot this entire thing. It was about a 40-minute update talking about a bunch of these bootleg cassettes that I've been buying lately. And unfortunately, my settings on this new app that I'm using to shoot video were set to the microphone in the little camera I have, which is an HD camera, but is pretty cheap. And the end result was a pretty good-looking video. It always is with me. But it sounded like it was filmed through a microphone from like a Burger King drive-thru.
Would you like to add a drink? You want fries with that? You want a toilet or Happy Meal?
So I have to do this over, which is fine. There's always things I feel like I forget and that I can improve on. So, you know, not a huge loss. I can always do one more, you know? I can always do it again better. So I got a bunch of bootlegs to talk about. I don't know, my obsessions with bootlegs and that sort of media is been an ongoing thing since I was a kid. I used to shop at a place called Oliver's, which is long gone, in Syracuse, New York. that had a wall of bootleg tapes, and most of it was hippie shit. Syracuse is a big college town. The whole kind of jam band culture is really interwoven with just society at large there. A lot of deadheads, a lot of hippies, a lot of fish people, that kind of stuff. So it was mostly that, but they had Metallica, Misfits. I have a great Sisters of Mercy bootleg from back then that's really, really great sounding. It's from the First, Last, and Always era. Excellent recording. Really good. So I always had bootlegs around. I got the first time I heard the No Life Till Leather demo, it was like this coveted bootleg that I bought there, and a couple other Metallica things and stuff. So I mean, that stuff was really important to me at the time. And once you really, really get obsessed with a band and listen to their albums into the ground, it's kind of cool to hear less than perfect versions of that capture live energy, or demos of stuff that you maybe have not heard with different versions. You know, if you like to nerd out, maybe you get this, you know, just hearing new stuff. There's certain bands, I mean, other than the aforementioned hippie bands, where people will track down every bootleg that they can. I mean, Motorhead, I think, is a big one. King Crimson, you know, that sort of thing. But I'm going to talk about the following. I have about 30 cassettes here that I've tracked down through 3 or 4 or 5 merchants online. A lot of sellers on eBay. One guy sells through Etsy, Depop, eBay, and his own site, I think. A lot of punk and hardcore stuff, which is very cheap. And a lot of metal stuff, which is needlessly pricey, but I wanted it anyway. So, in no particular order, I didn't even group the bands together because I just don't care, man. Let's talk about it. First up, we got the Misfits, 12 Hits from Hell. This is kind of one of these things that's been relatively well documented. People have been talking about it for a while. This is a record that got pulled from the shelves. It was officially released. They had this in the back storerooms, and it got the plug pulled at the last nanosecond. I believe I think it's the Stuck in the Past blog talks about it. One of those hardcore blogs talks about it, and it's a really good recording. It's an expanded session of the 3 Hits from Hell 7-inch. This is the only recording that features Doyle on guitar and Bobby Steele on guitar, so both eras of the Misfits kind of meeting in the middle. Most of the songs on this are from, or a good bulk of them anyway, are from the Walk Among Us record, just different versions. None of these, no songs on this are exclusive to this release, but this has really exclusive like versions of it with the 2 guitars, which is very, very cool. If you're a Misfits head, check this out. It's a fun listen. I'm sure it's uploaded on YouTube and stuff if you want to just spin it. Yeah, it was to be released, I think, on all 3 formats. Maybe not cassette, although this looks fairly legit, the layout. But definitely CD and vinyl, I think. Then we've got this Death Beyond the Unholy Demos collection. I have a CDR, like a pro-printed CDR, but pretty sparse version of this. And this sounds better. I don't know if the transfer's different between the two, or it's just simply the aesthetics and, you know, just my mind playing tricks on me. But this is all the Death demos collected. I still don't understand exactly why Relapse has reissued the Mantis stuff and not the Death demos. I don't know if there's some sort of legal reason why, or they just haven't gotten around to it. But these demos are super important. You know, if they haven't, they should put these out. Super primordial, early death metal. Groundbreaking stuff. I often forget how brutal this was for the time it came out. We're talking straight up mid-80s. 84, 85. Yeah, 84 and 85. And all the demos are included on this. I'll read them off to you. Death by Metal, Reign of Terror, Infernal Death, Back from the Dead demo, Mutilation demo, Rehearsal 84. So, all the pre-Scream Bloody Gore stuff for you right there. Then we've got a live set from the Netherlands, 1989. This is from the same seller as the previous there, the demo collection. This is a really good, either a really, really good audience recording or a decent soundboard recording. Certainly if you're a Death fanatic, you know, you wouldn't be too disappointed, I don't think. They sound good on this. They're playing well, of course. Right around the time or right after Leprosy came out, which was That was 88. This is 89. Pre-spiritual healing. Good balance of songs from Scream, Bloody Gore, and Leprosy are represented on here. So certainly a worthwhile thing if you can find it on eBay. The seller that sells these on eBay seems to be appearing and disappearing. I don't know if it's just that they're running out of stock. They're clearly like very nicely homemade, made at home, you know, printed, probably computer printed covers and that sort of thing. Color copy kind of deal. So I don't know if they just don't feel like doing it. There are some bigger bands that they make, so maybe they're getting cracked down on. I don't know if that happens. But I'll point out all the metal stuff that they have released because it's really good. So you can find it for yourself if you want. Then we've got punk one here. This is D.R.I. Demo 1982. 32 tracks on this. I was pleasantly surprised with this. I knew D.R.I. had demo material previous to the Dirty Rotten EP/LP. I didn't know it was so long. It's like pretty much the length of their first record, and there's a few songs on here that don't make it onto any other releases, which is really interesting to hear. They're not quite as fast and proto blast beat crazy as the songs that did make it onto the records, but they're more like kind of punk. But they're cool to hear. They're good songs as well. They're all untitled too, which is interesting. Yeah, I recommend checking this out, picking it up if you like D.R.I. I'm surprised at this point in my life I'm just listening to this now, considering I have a D.R.I. tattoo. I'm kind of a bit of a fan. Let me flip that record over. I'll be right back. Next, I want to talk about Tape Trader era extreme metal, legendary demos, super important and influential stuff. Pentagram might be one of the first things that springs to mind. Pentagram, 1987, Demoniac Possession, Chilean band that reformed in the 2000s, I want to say, and did some pretty good stuff then too. It's not always that stuff shakes out that way. Really well done, well replicated, shiny kind of paper for the labels. Nice shiny cardstock. Nothing much to see. We got just the track listing there. And that live shot on the inside. This is from a seller that has a website and sells this stuff on eBay as well. All of theirs are really quality, really well done, almost professionally made. Bootlegs. They also made this one. This is Obituary and Sepultura live in Eindhoven, 1991. Pretty cool. The Obituary tracks on this, it's got to be Cause of Death era. I believe James Murphy's playing on this. Live in Eindhoven, really well recorded. They're on full tilt. They sound so good at the time. Super tight, you know, lots of energy. Sepultura tracks on this are also really good, but there's not a lot of them. They only do 4 songs: Troops of Doom, Slaves of Pain, Beneath the Remains, and Lobotomy. But they're also on fire on this, so that's a great one. Same one, same seller. Nihilist, live in Bjorken, Stockholm, 4/4/1989. April 4th, 89. We all know how important Nihilist is. We all know I love Nihilist. Sadly, and I should have read the description because the website was very forthright about it, this is unlistenable. You can't tell it's Nihilist. You might as well... It could be any death metal band. It's just super foggy, muffled. You can make out some vocals, but you literally can't discern the vocals sometimes from, like, the bass or the guitar. Like, it's just a goddamn mess. Like, you can pick out little parts of songs a bit here and there, but it's bordering on unlistenable. So it's very nicely done. It's a good-looking tape, just like the Pentagram one and the Obituary Sepultura live split. You know, that's cool. That looks good. But yeah, if you happen to see this, I would skip it, to be honest. It's not great. Coro 700 Club LP and Speed Kills EP. This is from that punk seller. So simple photocopied cover, yellow paper, like the D.R.I. There's no label or anything like that. Coro were a hyper-fast U.S. hardcore band. Pretty sure they were U.S. I always kind of confuse them with the Neos because my friend introduced me to them around the same time, like whenever that was, over 20 years ago. And I always kind of have them intermingled in my brain because they're early hyper-fast hardcore bands that were in that arms race with D.R.I. and Deep Wound and all those other bands that were playing super fast at the time, Siege. But certainly if you like any of the aforementioned and you're not familiar with Coro, check them out. They're great. Got another Misfits from the same seller who did the other one that I talked about, 12 Hits from Hell. This is Beyond Evil. It's kind of cute little skull with a melted candle there. This is like a demos and outtakes kind of stuff. A lot of these versions, I'm pretty sure, are from the various sessions from that coffin-shaped box set from 1996 that got reissued, which was such a huge deal at the time. I don't think a lot of people get how cloaked in mystery the Misfits were. Cloaked in misery, too. Just there's very little information other than a couple of Thrasher interviews mentioning them, and there's one with Glenn Danzig. A lot of it was word of mouth back then, pre-internet, so there wasn't a lot in the way of like liner notes in their releases that were available. So you were either kind of tracking down the 7 inches for collector's prices even then, or getting these Caroline reissues that had like no liner notes. So getting a Coffin box set that had like a full colors and like a history of the band was a game changer. Kind of funny to think because their whole marketing stuff and their brand now and everything is the complete opposite of that. They're under a microscope and in bright sunlight, you know? But anyway, this kind of harkens back to that era when nobody knew who they were or what they were doing. A la Spinal Tap. And this is a cool collection. Like I said, I think some of these are the versions from the Sessions CD of the box set, but it seems like a few are different. It's hard to tell. It might just be a different like dubbing or hiss over stuff from lots and lots of dubs and trades. Like, who knows? But it's got a certain level of mystery and obscurity to it, which is something that's been sadly missing about the Misfits for, you know, since the year I graduated high school. It brings me back to that time. So, same seller, eBay. Iron Maiden, Night of the Living Dead, live at the Palladium, New York City, June 22nd, 1982. At this point, I think Bruce had just been in the band not very long, year or two. I think Number of the Beast had just come out that year, and this sounds amazing. It's a radio set, so it's almost, it could pass for a live album. Who knows? I'm not a big Maiden head. I like the albums, and that's kind of where it ends with me. I don't know if these songs maybe ended up as B-sides or something like that. They're certainly good enough for that. But all the songs, all the Diano era stuff that he's singing sounds really good. He's at the height of his powers at the time too, Bruce Dickinson on this. Lots of energy, stuff's a little bit ramped up, a little bit faster. The folks who made this, like, you get this cool red shell, or red case rather. You know, nicely printed, labels, all that kind of stuff. Then we've got the Final Conflict demo. This just got officially reissued, so I have this copy extra. It may just end up in my distro, so keep your eyes peeled if you're interested. Super important demo from the mid-'80s. Southern California hardcore with a tinge of metal. I feel like they got tagged with the crossover thing early on, which I'm not mad about it, but I feel like it's kind of inaccurate. You know, it's kind of a different thing that they were doing as opposed to Cryptic Slaughter. They were buddies. They'd wear each other's shirts and stuff like that. Kate and Patena from Hyrax was also a big fan of these guys, but they sound more just like heavily Discharge and UK hardcore influenced West Coast hardcore. Like they can play really well. It's tight. There's some really good solos. But I feel like calling it crossover is kind of a stretch. It's a little bit too anthemic for that, almost. Regardless, whatever you want to call it, awesome demo. This came before the Ashes to Ashes album, which debuted on Pussmort a year or two later. It's most of the same songs. It's just like a bit rougher and more like abrasive sounding recording-wise. Makes sense. It's a demo. And it just got reissued officially. And it's a little bit pricey, but that reissue is really nicely done. It comes in like a big manila envelope, and there's a zine involved, enclosed with it and everything. Then you've got the Septic Death crossed out twice tape. This is from the same folks that made the Iron Maiden stuff. They did a handful of punk releases too. That I picked up everything this seller on eBay sold pretty much, except for Merciful Fate stuff, because I have plenty of Merciful Fate bootlegs already. Really, really nice job with this. A lot of detail in Septic Death and Pushead drawn stuff, so they did a good job reproducing that. You know, no song titles on the actual cassette because there's just too many. This, I believe, is a compilation that originally came out in the early 2000s. There's that harsh noise. Originally came out in the early 2000s. I remember seeing it at Newbury Comics. It was on the shelf for like 3 seconds, and somebody scooped it up before I did. I think that's the same thing. Septic Death are one of those bands that have a lot of different versions and recordings. The Now That I Have Your Attention record is like a great, completely singular, unique entity in the whole battlefield that is early 80s hardcore. Septic Death were probably, I couldn't see it, maybe Poison Idea as well, but one of the first bands to kind of honor Japanese hardcore and recognize it and sort of, you know, be the punters for it, essentially. Pushead had a lot to do with that, putting Japanese hardcore bands on his comps and stuff. So, and I feel like you can hear the influence like in the music. It's a very odd sound. Doesn't sound like anybody else. It's fast US hardcore, but gets really discordant. There's a weird sort of snare drum sound. There's echo on the drums. It's very bizarre and very, very cool. If you didn't know Septic Death, there's a layperson's explanation of it. Same seller, some Slayer tapes here. Slayer 1983. You know, very early Slayer stuff. There's a little bit of everything on here. There's a couple of live sets. There's a rehearsal. There's an early demo. All of it's pretty decent sound quality. I think a lot of it ended up on, or one of the sets at least, ended up on that soundtrack to the Apocalypse box set. So there's some embryonic versions of Slayer songs that had different titles. There's one or two, I think, that didn't even make, just ended up on the cutting room floor, if I'm not mistaken. Like Ice Titans on here and that kind of stuff. It's a really, really great little snapshot of Slayer's humble beginnings. There's them feasting on a victim there. And unfortunately, my camera's not really focusing too well on stuff that I bring close to the camera. But it says LA's only black metal at the top there. So, yeah, cool. That early promo photo, man. Very, you know, first wave BM, you know. Then we've got Captors of Sin and European Massacre. These are both live cassettes from the Hell Awaits era, which is a great time for Slayer. It's crept up as my favorite Slayer record currently. Always was Show No Mercy. I like, you know, everything up to Seasons. I like Divine Intervention too, actually. But I keep going back to Hell Awaits more and more and more. It originally scared me off as a kid, that particular record, because something about the production was really foggy and obscure, and I don't know why. I just couldn't get into it when I was younger, except for Necrophiliac. I love that song because it was super fist-pumping, you know? And the older I get, the more I get to appreciate just kind of the dramatic nature of that record overall. This is a lot of stuff from that, as well as Show No Mercy tracks, 2 sets of that era. Just hyper speed. I don't know if, like, Dave Lombardo got some good crank over there, you know, in Europe while they were touring, or maybe it's just pure adrenaline. Who knows? But they're going so fast, and the shtick that Tom Araya has between songs, the banter, all that stuff is just hilarious. I mean, unintentionally so. I'm sure, you know, tongue-in-cheek to a certain extent there with him, but those between-song banter bits have been, like, used on, I think there's, like, live Charles Bronson, the band Charles Bronson stuff, and some other hardcore bands that kind of took those and put them on different things as sort of you know, a giggle.
For some reason in this world, skinheads, short hairs do not get along with the metalheads. There's only one kind of music in this world, and that is fast, hard. And whether you have short hair, long hair, mustache, beard, leather and jeans, suit and tie, no matter. We are all here together till fight, till death.
And, it's entertaining stuff. The intro to Necrophiliac about older women and shit. It's really over the top, I think not from these tapes, but around the same era, he's doing the same shtick and mentioning El Duce, who apparently was buddies with Slayer at the time. So that's a fun set to track down if you can find it. Then we'll move back over to some punk stuff here. This is from Das Boots tapes. They've got like this little, it's like the agnostic front boots there. Out of Buffalo, friend of mine runs this label. This is cool. He reissues a lot of really good stuff. This is Wire stuff I didn't know existed. Wire are one of those early punk bands, early post-punk too, kind of bridge the gap between the two really, that I haven't explored much past Pink Flag. I have, I think, a live CD of theirs. I still haven't gotten Chairs Missing. They're a band that changed dramatically from record to record, and Pink Flag is a very immediate record where they're sort of like paving the way for short song, like proto-hardcore stuff. Minor Threat famously covered 12XU. There's a lot of under a minute songs on it. And there's songs on it that are almost gothy, like Joy Division-y as well. Great record, Pink Flag. If you're into that kind of early punk stuff, check it out if you haven't. But anyway, there's two demos on this, one from 76 and one from 78 and 79. And the 76 stuff is super rough and raw and really aggressive and pissed, especially 76. I mean, 77 was the year, punk dropped or whatever, even though the ball was rolling, the year previous. So for as early as this is, really cool to hear those demos. Very, very neat. Then a couple of Danzig live ones. I collect Danzig live stuff like it's my job. I've got a couple of LPs. I've got a couple of LPs and another bootleg kicking around somewhere else. I love the energy the OG lineup had live. Usually it sounds really good. There's another one that's a radio set that is very, very early, where he's still doing Sam Hain and Misfits stuff. That's the stuff I like the most, where he's almost like a evil Las Vegas lounge guy. He's doing all the hits, and it's great. Fourth Encore, Moon River. Anyway, this is live at the Wilson Theater, 94. Little past the classic lineup there, and Halloween 1992. This, I believe, was a live radio broadcast. It was talked about on Headbangers Ball, because up until this year, for years and years before this, the band that played downtown LA on Halloween was Oingo Boingo, Danny Elfman's band, who I think are awesome. Like, fun, new wave stuff. I mean, obviously, the guy's a super talented dude, did all that great soundtrack work and all that. But it is, Danzig does feel a little bit more appropriate. But this is primo era, like How the Gods Kill. There's like 24 songs on this. Like, talk about longevity, just tenacity, getting through a set that length. It's every good Danzig song you can think of is on this, and they sound awesome. They're killing it on this. This, a little bit later, a couple years later, I think Danzig 4 is super underrated. Chuck Biscuits had just left the band at this point, so the drummer on this is good. He's no Biscuits, though. But it is great to hear all those Danzig 4 songs alongside all the classics. And again, not quite as many songs as the last one, but there's a lot of tracks on this as well. Same seller that did the Death stuff and the Septic Death stuff, the Iron Maiden, also did this. This is the Bremen tapes. This is Diano era. Apparently, when Iron Maiden struck out from East London, I believe. When they struck out from the UK and started playing Europe, they played Germany a lot. And these are all from different sets in Bremen, Germany, from what I could gather. They sound really good. They're a bit rough. It's not as polished as the Bruce era one that I showed few minutes ago, but it's very good. Certainly, if you're a fan of the self-titled and Killers, you won't be disappointed by this. And Deano sounds awesome on this. His range, I feel like, sounds a little bit better than the recorded material. Exciter, live in Ottawa, 84. Again, like, pretty high-quality recording on this. Might also be a radio set. I'm not sure. Kind of short, only 7 songs on this, but all the hits. You know, you got Violence and Force, War is Hell, Evil Sinner, Iron Dogs, Mistress of Evil, Rising the Dead, and of course, Pounding Metal. One of the best choruses in a metal song ever. This is from the same seller that put out the Pentagram demo. This is the Repulsion 1991 demo. That's the one with Helga Lost Her Head on it. And I think it was also issued as a 7-inch on Relapse, if I'm remembering right. And it's been a while since I spun this. I have several versions of this on different CDs. I think it's on my 2-disc version of Horrified, as well as I have the Relapse singles collection compilations that have like 4 7-inches on a CD. I just thought it'd be cool to have a reproduction of this, like, as its own on a tape. You know, total collector scum nerd shit. And, you know, I mean, Horrified is an amazing release, of course. Super groundbreaking, super influential. A lot of people have tried to replicate it, or at least a handful have. Really hard to do because it's so perfect. That weird bass tone and everything. I remember feeling like this was a little bit tame compared to it, but it's not as tame as I remember it. I'll put it that way. It's pretty fucking aggro, actually. It just has a little bit more mid-paced or you know, heavy stompiness to it than the unbridled assault of Repulsion Horrified, but it's fucking awesome. Void, Potion for Bad Dreams. Das Boot put this out as well. So you DC hardcore heads out there probably know about this. Void was kind of a different band from that scene, from the whole Discord early 80s hardcore scene in DC. They had really chaotic kind of energy in their live shows, more so than your average hardcore band even. They had... the thing that I'm repeating, which is not an original thought or idea, is that they always kind of sounded like they were on the verge of falling apart musically, and always kind of pulled it back together. It's even captured that way on their recordings, especially the split with The Faith. They're kind of bringing out like a metal and hard rock influence even more. You can hear it on songs like Who Are You, which is probably their biggest hit. But on this, you know, a lot of people kind of maligned it as like their attempt to do a like weak crossover or something like that. I'm not really hearing that with this. This is the first time, like when I first picked this up a couple of months ago, it's the first time I really sat down and listened to it. I think I had a weird CDR bootleg of it sometime in the 2000s, and people have been playing it, like it would appear on playlists and whatever, just via osmosis. It would come across my path here and there. And I was always kind of like, it sounds kind of weird. The vocals are kind of weird. I don't know. But really, this has kind of got me. I mean, it's not going to replace the tracks from the split, but this reminds me a lot of like later Black Flag, of Virulence and stuff like that. It's hardcore meets metal, but in a different way than whatever the Venice bands were doing, or, you know, D.R.I.'s crossover record or what have you. It's not thrash crossover. It's like weird Sabbathy, almost like Blue Cheer and like 70s hard rock proto metal meets hardcore. And it's cool. It's weird. There seems to be some sort of like confusion over what tracks are called what. I found 2 different versions of it on YouTube. One has like a few more songs than this one that are the 2 or 3 songs that the other version has that aren't on this do not sound good to my ears. They do have really weird singing, but that version supposedly has the wrong song titles, and the song titles on this are correct. So who knows? I don't know. I'm no expert on anything ever. Remember that. Just a fan, just a punter, not a fucking critic. But this, whatever it is really, really good. This collection of songs. Apparently the band pulled it. According to what I read, they didn't want it released. They didn't think it was good enough. So then we've got another Das Boot, The Crucifix, I Am the Establishment, 82 demo. How about I flip that over, because there's a really good song on the other side. Yeah, this is awesome. It's a very, very similar song to Hollow by Integrity with the trading off vocals. I think this might be the one that has a guy from Doom on it. I'm not sure, but yeah, this record rules. It bangs. You can get it for cheap. Anyways, back to the boots. Crucifix, I Am the Establishment, 82 demo. Another one. I have loved this band for a long time. And for whatever reason, the first album anyway, I've loved for a long time. Super obnoxious, far left leaning, kind of hardcore punk. Kind of like if you took the Dead Kennedys and their whole thing, and then took the ooze, the mutagen from Ninja Turtles, and just dumped it over the Dead Kennedys, you'd have the Crucifix. Extremely, like, deliberately aggravating vocals that are really just nasally and crazy sounding. Kind of along the lines also of bands like the Feeders and stuff like that. Just anti-art, kind of outsider art sort of stuff, kind of vibe to it, but also intermittently just raging hardcore as well. And this is their demo, I Am the Establishment. Even more like just angry than that record, that first album. A lot of songs on it too. It's about album length. A Michigan band that I think a lot of people forget are a Michigan band, because usually you think of Negative Approach and bands like that. The Fix, you know. Speaking of Dead Kennedys, Boot to the Head of Biafra. So, this is some really well-recorded live sets. Seems like the DK's had a lot of those, like really well-done live recordings, and these, most of these on here are reissued as a 3 CD thing, like officially on whatever Klaus Fluoride's label is after that legal dispute. They all sound good, from different eras. Some of these are from 82 or 83, and I think there's one from Bedtime for Democracy era, so around 85. The reference on the cover makes me think of, and it's probably a direct reference to Jello Biafra getting his ass kicked sometime in the 90s for being a sellout or some dumb shit like that by a bunch of crusties. I think it happened at Gilman Street. Not fair or cool, in my opinion. Then you've got Morbid Angel, the Morbid demos, another demo collection here. Another bunch of demos that should get reissued by somebody, I think. The Browning era, Morbid Angel stuff, very cool. You know, it's a little bit more slowed down. They didn't quite have the chops to play with the speed and intensity they did by Altars, but it's very cool to hear these very, very early versions of like Chapel of Ghouls, Bleed for the Devil, Bleed for the Devil, Abominations, Thy Kingdom Come. Yeah, it's got Screamforth Blasphemies from 86, Bleed for the Devil from 86, and Thy Kingdom Come from 87, which I think got reissued as a 7-inch at one point. I've got some Sepultura stuff. This is live in Chile, 1994. This is the one that I have from Tape Rot in this pile. Tape Rot, great seller, great little label there on Etsy and eBay. Mostly doing VHS stuff. Really interesting because they'll put out like, B-movies, Terror Vision, and The Deadly Spawn and stuff like that in the nice VHS like clamshell cases. But then they'll also do new movies, stuff that's like on Netflix. Like, it's interesting. Like, the person who runs it is very smart about what they pick to put on their VHSs. Still doing some tape bootlegs, but it appears to be like a lot of Memphis rap now, like a lot of 3-6 Mafia and stuff like that. So R.I.P. Gangsta Boo. But for a while, about a year or so ago, there's a fair amount of punk and metal on that imprint on Tape Rot. This is one of the things on there. I also got like a Slayer bootleg and a good Cramps bootleg from them. They did a good job with this, just like a smoky shell, smoky case there. And really, really good sounding recording. Again, I'm not sure if this was maybe used for like a radio broadcast or something, but awesome sounding Sepultura set from the Chaos AD era. Sounds like a soccer stadium full of people just freaking out. They sound really, really good. If you like Chaos AD, I think most people do. It's got a lot of songs from that, but they cover all eras of the band on this. Really great. This is from 3 years earlier, Europe 1991. This is a pretty well done crowd recording. You can hear people talking and stuff. It's not too distracting. It's got a lot of energy to it, which I like, with like the entire crowd screaming along to the choruses and stuff. It really adds to it, in my opinion, to hear everybody singing along. There's a Slapshot recording that's like that, officially released live record, live at the SO36, where you can hear people jumping on stage and like grabbing the mic from choke, and that's a great recording too. This kind of reminds me of like the metal equivalent of that, just a bunch of maniacs just yelling, you know, the lyrics to Beneath the Remains and stuff along with the band. And then finally, the Battalion of Saints demos, 81 and 83. Southern California, hardcore band. If you haven't heard Battalion of Saints, they were great. You know, I feel like they deserve more love in that whole conversation talking about classic hardcore. They were one of those bands that weren't trying to join that hyper-fast arms race with D.R.I. and the rest. They wanted anthemic choruses. They seemed to take a lot from what was going on in the UK at the time. Sort of reminded me, not musically, like they sounded quite different, but just in the way that the Zero Boys and Black Market Baby from DC kind of still had that anthemic chorus, like still inspired by the first wave of punk, but making it a little bit more aggressive kind of approach to hardcore, as opposed to just sheer unbridled extremity, which is something I'm totally fine with as well. Good stuff. All right. Hopefully my mic works on this, and then it'll be okay. I got a couple of tags I think I'm going to do next. There's the vinyl tag 2023. There's a metal tag. There was a cassette tag brought to my attention. So I'll probably, I think I might do the cassette tag one next. So maybe even now. I got a couple hours. We'll see. Anyway, till next time, take care. Tune in every Monday. Hopefully I'm going to have a new guest on. It looks like it's probably going to be Marty Worm next Monday. Going to talk with all the tight homies first, and then expand outward into other creators, eventually getting to people that don't do metal YouTube channels. You know, just get out of my comfort zone there. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your weird friends, tell your normie friends. Where's the stop button? Where are you, stop button? Okay. All right, later.